Hello everybody, we just finished watching the 10th episode of the Chainsaw Man anime. And being that we have finished watching the 10th episode, I'd say it's time to talk about the 10th episode. So, let's get started. To start off with all of the housekeeping information that we normally do, this episode is titled Bruised and Battered, on capitals, and with the fancy and symbol in between them. It's fancy, you know what I'm saying? This episode covers chapters, the entirety of 29, the entirety of 30, and all but one page of 31. I'll get into it here. Jaden should be arriving here to recording any second. I'll let you know when he pops in. But there's just a moment here at the end of this episode where they don't show everything they should have. And it's really annoying and it really irks me as a fan of the series. But we'll get to that whenever we get to it, right? So this episode starts out where the last one ended, right? Last time, Corbin had Denji in her arms, and Corbin was just like, I'm sorry, hey, all this. We now cut to the hospital, right? Where we see this television broadcasting of pretty much this entire battle that just occurred. And look who finally made it.
Oh, yeah, what's up?
So, this is Jaden. You probably know Jaden.
Yeah,
so, the TV has all the information of the battle. Pretty much devil hunters had fought people, and there's a whole thing going on, right? We cut to Aki in a bed, right? And here, Aki's just sort of sitting here going through his day-to-day stuff as we see Denji and Power sitting there around him. And these two get into massive arguments while eating all of these apples that Aki has around them. And just being really loud and annoying, right?
So, something to mention real quick is that apples in Japan, you're supposed to bring them when somebody's sick it's a symbol of like good health. But they didn't bring any for him. They just ate them all themselves.
Yeah, they just ate all of them themselves, yeah. And so pretty much Denji and Power have this massive disagreement, like yelling about this apple, right? And Aki just asks them, hey, is anybody from Special Division 4 still alive? And Denji's like, yeah, that Shrimp Corbin and the glasses dude. But he retired, right? He got the hell out of here, right? And Aki's like, oh man, that sucks. And Denji's like, alright, I'll see you later. I'm gonna take all the apples with me. And as he's starting to walk away, he puts an apple on the table for Aki. And it's like, hey, I'll leave one here for you. Right, as he leaves, him and Power have got to go meet with Makima about something, right? Aki then reaches down and picks up his stake, or what would you call that?
His sword.
His sword, but it's, what is it? Is it a stake?
Polearm.
Yeah, it's like a rail. It's a stake. His circular sword has got a point on it.
A rapier?
No, you know Aki's sword, right?
Yeah.
What would you call that style of sword?
A rapier.
Where it's round and it's got just a point.
It's a rapier.
That's not a rapier.
A fencing sword?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, it's the closest thing it is.
Alright, the fencing sword devil strikes again.
Yeah, the fencing sword devil. Yeah, so, Aki asks the sword, like, curse, how many years do I have left? And with this, a curse all forms around him, and the curse is just like 2 years, right? And Aki's sitting here is like, all right, well, in 2 years I'm gonna die. So he goes over, grabs some cigarettes,
He's got his priorities,
right? And he starts to cry, right? Of course, we know all of this. Aki can cry, he'll menno shit, blah blah blah.
There's some very eerie cigarette music playing, as I like to call it. It's a very strange soundtrack, as he was having like PTSD.
Yeah, almost, right? And as Aki's doing this, we see Denji outside the door. He's like, fuck, I left my manga in there. What am I gonna do? Right? And Denji's here and he's like, well, shit, I can't go in the room if he's crying. And he's like, and he starts to walk away and he's like, well, it makes sense he'd be crying. I mean, hell, almost all of his friends and coworkers just died, right?
Yeah.
And he just starts to think around and he's like, well, Menno died and she was my friend, but I didn't cry. Would I cry if Power died? Would I have cried if Aki died? Would I have cried if Makima died? And he comes to a conclusion like, I may be bummed out for maybe like a few days, but I'm not going to get that much of a shit. I'm going to get back to doing how I do it, right? And he's like, was my heart really replaced where I don't have emotions anymore? Right? And at this point, Denji and Power walk away as Kurose and Tendo, the two people from Kyoto who Makima met, who came to Tokyo, they walk into Aki's room, right? And they say they are here to coach the Aki and the rest of Special Division 4.
Yeah.
At this point, the opening plays.
Yeah.
Of course,
real quick.
this is Kickback by Kenshi Yonezu. For some reason, this entire time, I have said Kinjiro Suda.
And I've never thought to correct them because I always just thought that was right.
And it's not. Kinjiro Suda is actually Kishibei's voice actor.
He's a very famous voice actor.
I don't know how I messed this up this bad. I've repeated this for all previous 9 episodes of this series. So I would like to give out a formal apology to both Kinjiro Suda and Kishi Yonezu for somehow messing up who sings Kickback.
Oh, man.
I don't know what I'm going to do about this.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're
it's Kenshi Yonezu.
You're going to have to correct all of your videos.
I'm going to have to go back and re-edit all of
You're
them.
going to have to redub them.
And this episode is done by Kenshi Yonezu. And now... yeah, so, yeah, if you've been listening to this and you're like, man, that guy's a dumbass, that's why I don't watch his shit. Oops. But it's the opening. Opening's good, it's Kim Back. And it's by Kenshi Yonezu.
Yep.
Not Kinjiro Suda. But hey, we actually meet Kinjiro Suda in this next area, right? Because we see Makima is there with Power and Denji, taking them to this grave site that we've seen multiple times with Hilmeno's.
It's a very creepy grave site because every single cross looks the exact same.
Yeah.
It's not like a real grave site where they're usually different.
And we meet this man named Rai Kishibei. For the first time in the canonical story, we've seen him. He had a lot to do with Aki and Hilmeno earlier, right? And we see Kishibei here, right? And we learn that he is the strongest devil hunter in Public Safety Division 1, right? And his job is going to be to train our main characters here, Power and Denji. And first thing he does is he asks Power and Denji a few questions. I didn't write the questions down, that may be a problem, right? But he pretty much says stuff to the effect of, hey, did you cry when your allies died, right? Would you get revenge? Which side are you on,
Yeah, he
right?
said, are you loyal to the devils or humans? And Denji says, whichever one takes care of me. And Power says, whichever side's winning.
Yeah, and to this, Kishibei says, you two both get full points.
Yeah, so they have no loyalties.
Yeah.
Which is pretty funny.
The thing about this that I find very interesting, in the manga, this is in chapter 29. This chapter is titled Perfect Score. And here, in the manga, Kishibei says, hey, you two both get a perfect score. While here, he says you both get full points.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just like a translation thing, to where it doesn't really make sense, but it feels like you'd want to use that wording from the manga.
Well, some translations do stray a little bit and have different interpretations. I mean, that's just how translations are.
Yeah, I mean,
There's no exact word for word in every single language.
Yeah. I mean, in no language works like that. It just seems to me as if it should be that way.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like you should at least read up on a source material.
Yeah.
And sort of know what you're talking
Because in the Japanese, the dialogue does usually match exactly what the manga says. And so you would think for English subtitles they do the same.
But
so
also,
I agree with you on that.
But also, if we remember earlier, whenever there's the whole melons joke with Denji, Denji actually says boobs in the Japanese, but in the English he does say melons. So the English dub may actually have Kishibei saying you both get a perfect score. So just a weird little thing.
And the
there.
dub will also depend on the lip movements. They may have to make that completely different.
Yeah,
And that's just how dub is.
We'll just have to see, right? The dub for this episode should be coming out like in what, next week?
2 weeks.
2 weeks? Is it 2 weeks behind?
Yeah.
I always forget with Chainsaw Man. But pretty much we see that Kishibei will be training Power and Denji. He actually walks up to both Power and Denji and just snaps both of their necks.
Just absolute shock factor, which I say this a lot in these Chainsaw Man episodes. It's kind of expected at this point. Fujimoto just loves to do something ridiculous and then show afterwards.
Yeah. And pretty much Kishibei then says, hey, so you two are devils, right? You two can still be paralyzed since you're a humanoid form, but I'll put a little bit of blood in your mouth and you're fine, right? And then he has some logic of, hey, you guys are devils. I'm a hunter. I will hunt you devils until you devils can hunt me. Pretty much that. And he's like, all right, ready to do? I'll turn you both to a pair of serious badasses.
Yeah. And it's a really weird drinking animation, if you notice that. It just looks
of
stupid.
the blood.
Yeah.
Whenever Kishibei dumps the blood into Denji Power's mouth, right? And pretty much at this point, we cut back over to Aki, Kurose, and Tendo, right? They have Aki sitting in bed, and Aki uses Cone. Only problem is he can't. Right, he makes a hand movement, and he says Cone, which I'm pretty sure you're supposed to have Cone lined up. So if that was actually on a B cone...
Oh, yeah, he would have destroyed the entire hospital.
He would have murdered some shit.
I noticed that as well.
He was just like, Cone. Sorry, Grandma.
That's one hell of an experiment.
Right? And then pretty much Kurose and Tendo say, like, all right, we're going to be training you, and how to do that, you are either going to have to quit and go to the public sector, or you're going to have to get a contract for New Devil.
Yeah. It really goes to show that, like, even though he's literally hospitalized, they're already discussing their next plans for him.
Yeah.
There's no break for these guys.
No. And Aki's like, how can I quit? I've been through all of this shit. And they're like, all right, we'll bring you devil paperwork tomorrow. Right, we'll see you then. And as they leave, Kurose's like, oh, hey, it looks like this hot babe's in here to see you. Right, as they send him in, and Aki realizes who this is. At this point, we cut back over to Denji and Power. We see that it's nighttime, and they've had a tough day of training, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're destroyed. It seems like Denji has a brain aneurysm, right? And Power just goes and knocks him on the head.
He just starts making these weird noises. It's so funny.
He's just like, ah! And Power just comes over, knocks him on the head a few times, like, gets his head locked back in straight. And Denji's like, hey, how many deaths did I have today? And Power's like, I don't know. It was at least over 20 for both of us. Right?
Also, before we continue, there's something I forgot to mention. But there was a scene where Power makes a tool and gives to Denji to hit Kishibe.
Yes.
I think it's happened earlier. I didn't know that Power's ability could go to other people.
Yeah, it's sort of just like she solidifies the blood.
Okay.
It's like how, it's not like they can control the blood, but they can use it as a blunt weapon.
I always thought that the weapon was an extension of herself in a way. But alright.
But as you also see, like, later this episode, there's these bottles of blood above. Those aren't really, they are an extension of her, but they aren't.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So pretty much, Denji has this brain aneurysm. Power knocks his head back on, and pretty much Denji and Power start to walk home. They're like, do we run? And they're like, no, they'll hunt us down and actually exterminate us as devils. But then they're like, you know what? I just really want to give that fat, drunk asshole a piece of my mind, right? And Power's like, you know what? I'll come up with hundreds of plans. This will be a war of wits, right?
Yeah, and they had this really nice crescendo music, and then it cuts.
Yeah, and they're like, we're going to beat his ass, right? We cut to the next morning. Kishibe is coming to see both Denji and Power to get them started on their next day of training, right? Pretty much, it's this thing where Power conjures this blood spear, throws it towards the door. Kishibe ducks on it. There's these blood bottles on the floor above, right? Power slings those down and uses them. Denji hops down, tries to harm Kishibe with the axe, and he does it, right? Pretty much they all get knocked out, and Kishibe's just like, hey, you know why you lost today? First off, Denji, you don't have enough foresight to see what I'm going to do. You need to have more of a battle mindset. And Power, whenever you use too much blood, you become anemic. Two big weaknesses that you two both have right here.
Okay.
Right? And then he says, well, you know, with that, it was a good plan. You two are done for today, right? As he starts to leave, and Denji's like, hey, Powie. She calls her Powie, which I think is so interesting. But he's like, hey, we're done for today. Don't need to worry about it anymore. We're done. And at this point, Kishibe turns around, throws a knife that ends right in Denji's head.
Right in the middle, yeah.
Right? And at this point, Denji's just like, oh. Right? And at this point, we cut back to Aki.
Well, I have some thoughts about this scene. Let's talk about this for a second.
Yeah.
So first of all, it finally showed Glass's power, which is the scene everybody was waiting for.
Beautifully animated.
We finally got a foot shot of power that we were robbed of. And the animation for this was all 2D as far as I'm aware.
Yes.
It looked really nice.
This entire episode has been 2D.
Besides like some backgrounds and whatnot, it was all 2D. And it goes to show, Mappa knows how to do 2D animation well. It's just when they get these complex assets that it gets difficult, like with the Chainsaw Man.
Chainsaw and Katana Devil.
Yeah,
I mean, those are two things that they've had CGI.
But like, I think with like Jujutsu Kaisen, which is also animated by Mappa, they're able to do really good like fist-to-fist combat, and it looks great.
Mappa's great at fist-to-fist combat.
And they were able to do that again this episode. And I have in my notes, their entire 2D animation budget went to this scene, because it looks really nice.
It does look really good.
This was definitely the highlight of the episode.
Yeah. So at this point, well, what would have been the highlight would have been here at the end. As Aki goes devil shopping.
Devil shopping. That's what this episode needs to be called.
Aki goes devil shopping. So Aki's going devil shopping with Kurosei and Tendo. It's a really interesting thing of like it's this underground lair and it's all like locked up.
It really wondered, how do they get these things down there? Because
Yeah.
that elevator is really slow too.
Yeah, and like there's all these rooms and it's all locked up, right? And we see all these devils are in here. And pretty much as we're walking, Kurosei says some like backstory about this place. And he asks Aki who that woman was who came into the room. And we learned that was Himeno's little sister, right? Pretty much she had received letters from Himeno, mostly having to do with herself and about Aki, being that she wanted to bang Aki, right?
Yeah.
Wanted to get him out of the devil hunting business. And she pretty much brought those by for Aki and said, hey, you should have these, right? And this sort of gives Aki a moment of realization and also a moment of, I cannot let this happen again. I will get revenge, right? And all these letters... it's very interesting where it's all this text and just in the corner it just appears.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to translate things like these.
Yeah, but it works for the purpose. And at this point, we go and see room 108. Inside this room, Kurosei says is the future devil, right? This devil is a devil that has two people in public safety made contracts before. One gave half of their lifespan, and the other gave all of their 5 senses. And he's like, maybe if they'll like you, you'll get off scot-free. As we go into
You'll get a bargain.
We'll get a bargain.
You still gotta pay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into it. And as Aki walks in here, we see this eye sort of just staying in the distance.
Very much like Fullmetal Alchemist. Fullmetal Alchemist has a lot of eye imagery like that.
It's just this eye, and it's just this like really build up of, oh no, what is this devil? What is this devil? And it starts to do something as the episode cuts.
The cliffhanger devil strikes again.
So if you know what happens in the manga, I have been waiting for this the entire time.
Yeah.
The future devil, not to get into any spoilers, is great. Funny as can be, right? But it just had to cut. And like I said, this is the second to last page of the chapter. They could have animated one more page, gotten in like 2 joke lines, and you could have been done. One
page that shows what he looks like, says the lines, and cuts.
Yes.
And if the manga was able to do it and provide a good, satisfying ending, or cliffhanger ending, anime could have too.
And I mean, that's a cliffhanger ending, but I understand, but they build up so much suspense just to have this not happen.
Yeah.
While in the manga, they could have still built up, or in the anime here, they could have still built up all of the suspense and just had the one joke.
They definitely needed to, I forgot my train of thought. Pay off the suspense. That's what I was looking for.
Yes, because they don't.
With something.
Not at all. They don't whatsoever. So, at this point, we get the ending. It's called Dogland by People One.
So
it was a good ending. I didn't mind it. I mean, it may be one of the better ones we've had this season.
Oh, I love this one. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's top 3, but it's definitely like top 5.
Yeah,
it's very
top
decent.
5. I think that the song really carries it.
It does.
The animation's not that good.
The animation's a very interesting style of real-world photos that are being drawn over.
It's real video and animation that has been filtered over and drawn over.
And then over, like at the end, we just see Denji running through this corridor. It's a very cool visual, in my opinion.
It's cool visual. It's not the
good song.
It's not the best animation though. I think the best animation's still probably
that third ending.
The power one. I really like the power one.
Yeah.
But besides that, so overall, I would give this episode, what would you give it first?
I would give it like a 9 out of 10. But the future devil, this has pissed me the fuck off. 6 out of 10.
This is the first time I've rated it higher than you.
No, I really like this episode. It really builds a lot of things. It's just this stupid future devil thing. I've been waiting for this to be animated this entire time, and it just hasn't been. It's so stupid.
I gave it an overall 7. I feel like this episode did not adapt a whole lot. How many chapters does it adapt? Do you know?
2.9.
Yeah, it only it barely.
But it does 3, which almost all of these episodes have been doing.
Yeah, but
so
I feel like there wasn't as much content in this one as it was. And I know it's slower paced chapters, but still. I mean, we finished this review relatively quickly.
We should have had that stupid future devil.
But yeah, that knocked off a lot of points for me.
I give it in all reality like a 7. Same as
yeah, because they gave it a lot of hype and then let the hype die. And so by the time next episode comes around, we finally get to see it. It's gonna be less of a payoff.
Yeah. So with that, I don't think I've got anything else to say.
That's all I have for me.
This has been Chainsaw Man episode 10, titled
two more episodes.
2 more episodes,
All right.
titled Bruised and Battered. And yeah, we'll see you next time for episode 11.
With my suffering.
All right, see you guys. Glowplasma231 out.